Continuing then, Book 1, Chapter 2, James Joyce, Finnegans Wake. Now, to forbear for ever so little of iris trees and lily orangans, concerning the genesis of Harold or Humphrey Chimpton's occupational agnomen, we are back in the pre-surnames pro-Dramorith period, of course just when Enos chalked Haltraps, and discarding once for all those theories from older sources which would link him back with such pivotal ancestors as the Glues, the Gravies, the Northeasts, the Anchors, and the Earwickers of Sidlesham in the Hundred of Manhood, or proclaim him offsprout of Vikings who had founded Wapentake and settled him in Herrick on Eric, the best authenticated version, the Dunbat, read the reading of Holford Ben Eder, has it that it was this way. We are told how in the beginning it came to pass that like cabbaging Cincinnatus, the grand old gardener was saving daylight under his redwood tree one sultry Sabbath afternoon, hag Chivichas Eve, in pre-fall paradise peace, by following his plough for rooches in the rare garden of Mob House, ye old Marine Hotel, when royalty was announced by runner to have been pleased to have halted itself on the high road along which a leisure-loving dog-fox had cast followed, also at walking pace by a lady pack of cocker spaniels, forgetful of all save his vassal's plain fealty to the ethnarch Humphrey or Harold, stayed not to yoke or saddle, but stumbled out, hot-faced as he was, his sweatful bandana loose from his pocket-coat, hasting to the forecourts of his public in toupee, surcingle, sola scarf, and plaid +4s, puttees and bulldog boots, ruddled cinnabar with flagrant morrow, jingling his turnpike keys, and bearing aloft, amid the fixed poles of the hunting party, a high perch atop of which a flower pot was fixed, earth-side hoist with care. On his majesty, who was, or often feigned to be, noticeably long-sighted from green youth, and had been meaning to inquire what in effect had caused yon causeway to be thus potholed, asking substitutionally to be put wise as to whether paternoster and silver doctors were not now more fancied bait for lobster-trapping honest blunt harum-frilled, answered in no uncertain tones, very similarly with a fearless forehead. "No, your maggers, all we're just a-catching on bluggy earwiggers." Our sailor king, who was draining a gugglet of obvious Adamale, gift both and Gorban, upon this, ceasing to swallow, smiled most heartily beneath his walrus mustaches, and indulging that none too genial humor which William the Conk on the spindle side had inherited with the hereditary Whitelock, and some short-fingeredness from his great Aunt Sophie, turned towards two of his retinue of gallow glasses, Michael, Etheling Lord of Likes and Offaly, and the Jubilee Mayor of Drogheda, Elcock, the two scatterguns being Michael M. Manning, Protosyndic of Waterford, and an Italian excellency named Jubilee, according to a latter version cited by the learned scholarch Canavan of Canmacnoise. In either case, a triptychal religious family symbolizing puritas of doctrina, business per usuals, and the perchy patch of hemlock where the paddish pretties grow, and remarked dulcely, "Holy bones of St. Hubert, how our red brother of poor Ingrania would audibly fume did he know that we have for trustworthy bailiwick a turnpiker, who is by turns a pike baler, no seldomer than an earwigger. For he kenned John Pill with his cork so grey, and his haunts in his house in the morning. One still hears that pebble-crushed laughter, jappy-jap, cheery-charlie, among the roadside tree the Lady Holmpatrick planted, and still one feels the emossive silence on the Cladstone eligibeling, "I my eights I'd born." Comes the question, are these the facts of his nomen gentilization as recorded and accoladed in both or either of the collateral Andrew Paul Murphy narratives? Are those their fata, which we read in Sibylline between the fax and the nefas? No dung on the road, and shall no Homaya be our place like? Yea, Molochi and King of Okan, we shall perhaps not so soon see. Pink punks that bail for Sikhs a license, where conceptors where centaurs stay. Bear in mind, son of Hakma, if so you have metheg in your midness. This man is a mountain, and unto changes doth one ascend. Heave we aside the fallacy, as punicle as Finnegan, that it was not the king's self, but his inseparable sisters, uncontrollable night-talkers. Scherzerazde with Donia Zadi, who afterwards, when the robbers shot up the socialites, came down into the world as amusers, and were staged by Madame Sudlow and Rosa and Lily Misconduct in the pantomime that two pits Pathironost, Meliodorus and Galathee. The great fact emerges that after that historic date, and all holographs so far exhumed, initialed by Humphrey, bear the signala HCE. And while he was only and long and always good Duke Humphrey for the Hungerline scalpines of Luculazid and chimbers to his cronies, it was equally certainly a pleasant turn of the populace which gave him as sense of those normative letters the nickname "Here Comes Everybody." And imposing everybody he always indeed looked, constantly the same as an equal to himself, and magnificently well worthy of any and all such universalization, every time he continually surveyed, amid vociferations from in front of "Accept these few nutties, and take off that white hat," relieved with "Stop his grog, and put it in the log, and Lotus is his Bassavoco. Boots." From good start to happy finish, the truly Catholic assemblage gathered together in that king's treat house of satin alustra-like, above floats and footlights, from their asbolvelts and ox-gangs unanimously to applaud the inspiration of his lifetime and the hits of their careers. Mr. Wallenstein Washington Semper Kelly's Immergreen Torers, in a command performance by special request with the courteous permission of pious purposes for home-dromed and enliveneth performance of problem, passion, play of the melancholy, rushing strong since creation, a royal divorce. Then near the approach towards the summit of its climax, with ambitious interval, band selections from the Bow Girl and the Lily, on all horsery show command nights from his viceregal booth. His boss sallooner is sailing here, a cuckoo spit less eminent than the ritual hoods of Maccabean Cullen. Where, a veritable Napoleon the Nth, our world stage's practical joke piece, and retired Cecility co-comediant, in his own wise, this folk's forefather-all of the time sat, having the entirety of his house about him, with the invariable broad-stretched kerchief cooling his whole neck, nape, and shoulder blades, and in a wardrobe-panelled tuxedo completely thrown back from a shirt well entitled a swallow. On every point far outstarching the laundered claw-hammers and marble-topped highboys of the pit stalls and early amphitheatre. The piece was this: look at the lamps. The cast was thus: see under the clock. Ladies circle, cloaks may be left. Pit, prummer, and parterre. Standing room only. Habituels conspicuously emergent. A baser meaning has been read into these characters, the literal sense of which decency can scarcely hint. It has been blurtingly bruited by certain wisecrackers, the stinks of Maharatter in the night plots of their morning, that he suffered from a vile disease. Athma unmanner them. To such a suggestion, the one self-respecting answer is to affirm that there are certain statements which ought not to be, and one should like to hope to be able to add, ought not to be allowed to be made. Nor have his detractors, who, an imperfectly warm-blooded race, apparently conceive him as a great white caterpillar capable of any and every enormity in the calendar recorded to the discredit of the Juke and Kellykeck families, mended their case by insinuating that, alternately, he lay at one time under the ludicrous imputation of annoying Welsh fusiliers in the People's Park. Hawk, hawk, hawk. Fawn and Flora on the lee love that lily o' Jock. To anyone who knew and loved the Christ-likeness of the big, clean-minded giant H.C. Earwicker throughout his excellency, long vice-regal existence, the mere suggestion of him as a lost sleuth nosing for trouble in the booby-trap rings particularly preposterous. Truth beard on prophet compels one to add that there is said to have been quondam some case of the kind implicating, it is interdum believed, a quidam. If he did not exist, it would be necessary quoniam to invent him. About that time stambulating around, dumbling in leaky sneakers with his tart record, who has remained topantically anonymous, but let us hew him Abdullah Gamalakshi, was, it is stated, posted at Malins at the instance of watch warriors of the Vigilance Committee, and years afterwards cries one even greater, I bid, a commender of the frightful, seemingly, unto such as were sulhan sated, tropped head, waiting his first on the month Frood's turn for that choppa kabak salakubi on the old house for the charge hard, Roche haddocks off Hawkins Street. Lo, you blondie liar, Gob's seen you in the marketplace, and she's eighth our home defileth these boils. There's a cab full of bash indeed in the homer of that meal. Slander, let it lie its flattest, has never been able to convict our good and great and no ordinary Southron Earwicker, that homogeneous man, as pious author called him, of any graver impropriety than that advanced by some Woodwards or regarders, who did not dare deny, the shomers, that they had, chin ted, chin tam, chin chin taffin, that day consumed their soul of the soul of the corn, of having behaved the ungentlemanly and modest opposite, of having behaved with ungentlemanly immodest opposite a pair of dainty maidservants in the swooth of the rushy hollow wither, or so the two groan and pinners pleaded. Dame Nature in all innocency had spontaneously, and about the same hour of the eventide, sent them both, but whose published combinations of silkelane testimonies are, where not dubiously pure, visibly divergent, as wapped as from wept, on minor points touching the intimate nature of this, a first offence in vert or venison, which was admittedly an incautious but, at its wildest, a partial exposure, with such attenuating circumstances, Garth and Gadeth green, where Soapman brideth girling, as an abnormal Saint Swithin summer, and, yes, says Rosa Sharon, a ripe occasion to provoke it. We can do without them. Wives, rush to the rescuers. Ofman will tomen while lead is the law. Zesids arcadum, Villa pleach, vala pluck, fick up for flesh Nelly, El Mundo now, Zo Flynn. If she's a Lilith, pull early, Pauline, allow, and mailers a bushed, keep black, keep black. Guiltless of much laid to him, he was clearly, for once at least, he clearly expressed himself as being with still a trace of his erstwhile burr, and hence it has been received of us that it is true. They tell the story, an amalgam as absorbing as calcium chlorides and hydrophobe sponges could make it, how one happy go gusty ides of April morning, the anniversary as it fell out of his first assumption of his birthday suit, and rights and appurtenance to the confusioning of human races, ages and ages after the alleged misdemeanor, when the tried friend of all creation, Tigerwood Roadstaff to his stay, was billowing across the wide expanse of our greatest park in his caoutchouc kepi and great belts and hide sacks and his blaufunksfustian and ironsides jackboots and Bhagavat gaiters and his rubberized Inverness, he met with a cad with a pipe. The latter, the luciferant, not the aureolate, who, the odds are, is still berting dagabout in the same straw bamer, carrying his overcoat under his shoulder, sheepside out, so as to look more like a country gentleman in signing the pledge as gaily as you please, heartily accosted him with, "Guinness thou tool me and jewel me dinner, oors Elfin." A nice how do you do in Pool Black at that time, as some of our old dazers may still tremblingly recall. To ask could he tell him how much a clock it was that the clock struck, had he any idea by cock's luck as his watch was Brady's. Hesitancy was clearly to be evitated. Execration as cleverly to be harnessold. The earwicker of that spurring instant, realizing on fundamental liberal principles the supreme importance, nexally and noxally, of physical life, the nearest help relay being Ping Ping KO St. Patrick's Day in the Fenian Rising, the unwishful as he felt of being hurled into eternity right then, plugged by a soft-nosed bullet from the sap, haughted, quick on the draw, and replying that he was feeling tip-taffcue, produced from his gun pocket his Jurgensen's shrapnel Waterbury, our communionism, his by unscapture, but on the same stroke, hearing above the skirling of harsh Mother East old Fox Goodman, the bellmaster, over the wastes to south, at work upon the 10-ton tonuent thunderous tenor toller in the speckled church, "Cohoonin's caw," told the inquiring kidder, "by Jehovah, it was 12 of M. Sidereal, and tankard time, adding but all, as he bended deeply with smoked sardinish breath, to give me more pandus to the copper stick he presented," though this seems in some confusion with the chap stuck ginger, which, as being of sours, acids, salts, sweets, and bitters compounded, we know him to have used as chaw-chaw for bone, muscle, blood, flesh, and vim vital, that whereas the Hakuse accusation against had been made, what was known in high quarters as was stated in Morgan's Post, by a creature in human form, who was quite beneath part and several degrees lower than your triple-hydrid snake. In greater support of his word, it, quaint anticipation of a famous phrase, has been reconstructed out of an oral style into the verbal for all time with ritual rhythmics, in queritary quietude, the two semens stuct from successive accounts by Noah Webster in the redaction known as the sayings attributive of H.C. Earwicker, prize on shillings, post lots free. The flaxen Gyges tapped his chronomantrum dum-drum, and, now standing full erect above the ambijacent floodplain, scene of its happening, with one Berlin gauntlet chop-stock in the half of his elbow, the ancientest signalor, his gesture meaning, pointed at an angle of 32 degrees towards his Duk Ferrer's overgrown milestone, as fellow to his gauge, and after a rendy present pause, averred with solemn emotion's fire, shake, comrade, me only, them 5 ones, he is equal combat, I have one straight, hence mine own nation-wide hotel and creamery establishments, which for the honours of our mutual daughters, credit me, I am willing to take my stand, sir, upon the monument, that sign of our redemption and hygienic day to this hour, and to make my oath to my sinfinners, even if I get life for it, upon the open Bible, and get the great taskmasters, I lift my hat. And in the presence of the deity itself, Andwell of Bishop, and Mrs. Mikan of the High Church of England, as of all such of said my immediate with-dwellers, and of every living soul in every corner wheresoever of this globe in general, which useth of my British to my backbone tongue, and commutative justice, that there is not one tittle of truth, allow me to tell you, in that purest of fabrications. Gaping Gill, swift to the mate Erthors, sworn to the check self, diagnosing through Eustace Stube that it was to make with a markedly post-puberal hypertituary type of Heidelberg man-like cavern ethics. Lufted his sloping word, lufted his sloping forward, bad Swetigor, good Murrah and Dublotch on it, as he was greedily obliged, and like a sensible ham, with infinite tact in a delicate situation, seen the touchy nature of its perilous theme, thanked them for guilders received in time of day, not a little token of Bach all the same, that was ow the god's clock it was, and upon humble duty to greet his tisk minister, and he shall gild the gaper, and there his moldy voids went about his business, whoever it was, saluting corpses as a matter of course. One could hound him out had one heart for the monticules of scalp and dandruff droppings blaze his trail. Accompanied by his trusty Snorler and his permanent reflection verbigracious. I have met with you, bird, too late, or if not, too warm and early, and with tag for Iliot in his second mouth language, as many of his big-timers' verbatim words, which he could bowably call to memory that same Kveldiv, ere the hour of the twattering of bards, in the twitterlitter between Druidia and the deep sleep sea, when supertide and souvenir to Charlatan Mail jointly came gently, and along the quiet darkenings of Grand and Royal man's flew and crept a hedge, when as to many a soft-tongued pawky talk, mood answer you suffer, poggy og, Arvanda always acquiescent, while studying castells in the blown and studying cowshots over the Minoran. He spat in careful convertedness a mosaic dispensation about his hearthstone, if you please, Irish saliva, moshy to whole, but with a respectable, prominently connected fellow of Iro-European ascendances with well-dressed ideas who knew the correct thing, such as Mr. Shalsway or Mr. Shalwalaf, expectorate after such a callous fashion. No thank yous. When he had his belcher spucker tuck in his pocket thuck, muse-fed with his thockets, after having supped on the dish sought in pottage, which he snobbishly dabbed peach Bombay, it is Raleigh only looking poking pills and pie, which she knows was senaft and pibered him, a supreme of excelling peas, balled under Minshog's milk into white malt wine sour, a proviant the little bilker hoarsely relished chaffet, in the snevel season, being as fain on't as your rat with fennel, and on this celebrating occasion of the happy escape for a crowning of pat valiance, this regional platter, Benjamin of Bolus, with a Spanish olive to middle point its zenith, was marrying itself porco grasso, arabosked very deluxiously with a bottle of Venus Brewery 98, fellowed for second nuptials by a Pious Porter Grand Cur, of which of both cherished table lights, though humble the banquet, 'tis a layman's farewell. He obdurately sniffed the cobweb-crusted corks. Our cad's bit of strife, nee Berenice Maxwelton, with a quick ear for spittoons, as the aftertale hath it, glaned up as usual with domestic husbandry, no Persicks and Armilians for thee, Pomeranzia, but slipping the clave in her claw, broke of the matter among 111 others in her usual curtsy. How faint these first vespers womanly are, a secret pispiliando, amad the lovery den of their manfolker. The next night nudge one, as was Hegesippus over a hup of tea, her eyes dry and small and speech ticklish, because he appeared a funny colour, like he couldn't stood they old hens no longer, to her particular reverend, the director, whom she had been meaning in her mind primarily to speak with, hush intra, just a timblespoon, trusting between coupled lips and Annie Lowry promises, might she never have Elksnary pudding come Hunanov for her peckle pitchins. That the gospel so delivered in his epistolier buried tea toastily in their Irish stew would go no further than his Jesuit's cloth. Yet, in Veners Venitas, volatiles valetoldum, it was this overspoiled priest, Mr. Brown, disguised as a Vincentian, who, when seized of the facts, was overheard in his secondary personality as a Nolan and under-reared post soul by accident, if, that is, the incident, it was an accident, for here the role of Ecclesiastes of Hippo outpuffs the witness of Havaban Anna, to pianissime a slightly varied version of Crooked Ribs confidentials. What Mayor Lois said but for Josephine's sake. Hands between her hands, in fealty sworn, my braver best, my frore. And to the strains of this secret of her birth, hushly pierced the rubiand orellum of one Philly Thurston, a lay teacher of rural science and orthophonetics, of a near stout figure, and about the middle of his 40s during a priestly flutter for safe insane bets at the hippic run fields of breezy Baldoyle on a date, WW goes through the card, easily capable of remembrance by all pickers up of events national and Dublin details. The doubles of Perkin and Pollock peered in prole when the classic and courage Hackney plate was captured by two noses in a stablecloth finish, neck and neck, some and none, evelo nevelo, from the cream-cold bold boy Cromwell after a clever getaway by Captain Chaplain Blount's Rohinny St. Donalaw, drummer coxswain, non-depict third, at breakneck odds, thanked to you, great little, bonny little, porty little, Winnie Widger, your other nappies, who in his never-ripped mud and purpular cap was surely leagues unlike any other phantom weight that ever topped over timber maggies. 'Twas too poisonous Timcoes, the wetter is pest, the wrens are overt, and come, and the volks of the turf is hurled on our land. Of the name of Treacle Tom, as was just out of pop following the theft of a leg of Kehoe Donnelly in Peckenham's finished pork, and his own blood and milk brother Frisky Shorty, He was to be exquisitely punctilious about them, both shorty and frisky. A tister come off the hulks, both of them awful poor. What was out to on the bum around for an oofbird game, for a ginny goblin, or a small thicken as chanced, while the Seaforths was making the colleen ball, to ear the passin in the moulter clobber, make use of his own language, edzo on. Touching the case of Mr. Adams, what was in all the Sundays about it, which he was rubbing noses with and having a gurgle off his own along of the buddy bloke in the specs. This Treacle Tom, to whom reference has been made, had been absent from his usual wild and woolly haunts in the land of counties capellines. For some time previous to that, he was, in fact, in the habit of frequenting common lodging-houses, where he slept in a nude state, hail fellow with meth, in strange men's cots, but on race night, blotto after divers tots of hellfire, red biddy, bulldog, blue ruin, and creeping jenny, Eglindine's choicest herbage, supplied by the duck and doggies, the galloping primrose, Bridget Brewster's, the cock, the postboy's horn, the little old man's, and all swell that aims swell, the cup in the stirrup. He sought his well-warmed Leobabob in a housing room, abide with one another at Block W. Why didn't he back it? Pump Court, the Liberties, and what with multipuke on voltapuke, resnored alcoherently to the burden of I come, my horse delayed, num, the substance of the tale of the evangelical Buzzy and the Russinerbian, the girls he would keep calling them for the collarette and skirt, the sunbonnet and carnation. In parts, it seemed he was before the Ayets of Martus, or other whales the thirds of fossil years, he having beham with Kathia, when Lavinias had their men's lease to sea, in a sumptuous doodly show, whereat he was looking for fight niggers with wild horses. Oft in the chilly night, the metagonistic, the epithalamorous, during uneasy slumber in their hearings of a small and stony broke cash draper's executive, Peter Cloran, discharged, O'Mara, an ex-private secretary of no fixed abode, locally known as Mildew Lisa, and who had passed several nights, funnish enough, in a doorway under the blankets of homelessness, on the bunk of Iceland, pillowed upon the stone of destiny, colder than man's knee or woman's breast, and Hosty, no slouch of a name, an ill-starred beach-busker, who, sans rooty and sans scrapey, suspicioning as how he was setting on a toadstool on the verge of self-abyss, most starved, with melancholia over everything in general, Nightberman, you served him with Natagal's nano, had been towhead tossing on his shakedown, devising ways and manners of means, of what he loved to infidelicence somehow or other in the nation, getting a hold of some chap's parabellum in the hope of taking a wing sociable and lighting upon a side-wheel dive somewhere off the Dokey down Larry and bleak rookie Trameline, where he could throw true and go and blow the sibicidal napper off himself for 2 bits the Bodywell boutitude in the peace and quietibus of a one-shore shot bottle. He, after having been trying all he knew with the lady's help of Madame Grisel for upwards of 18 calendars to get out of Sir Patrick Dunn's, through Sir Humphrey Jervis's, and into the St. Kevin's bed in the Adelaide's hospitals, from these incurable Welleslays among those uncarable Wellesdays, through Santiago by his cockle hat, good Lazar, deliver us, without after having been able to jerry-wangle it any sides. Lisa O'Davis and Roche Mangan, who had so much in common epipsychodetically, in the phrase be permitted, hostis et odor in super petro profractus, and in understood things slept under their sleep of the swim-born, in the one sweet undulant mother of tumbler bunks, with hosty just how the shavers in the shawl, the yokels in the yotes, or, well, the wasters in the wild, and the bustling tweeny dawn of all works, mead of anthems, where we pant, had not been many jiffies furbishing pot lids, door brasses, scholars' apple cheeks, and link boys' medals, when, as happer-minded like no fella, he go make black and beg fuss longa white man, the rejuvenated busker, for after a good night's rave and rumble and a Sinkham's top morning with his coaxes, he was not the same man, and his broad-awake bedroom suite, our boys, as our Byron called them, were up in the shuffle from the hog's home they love-named the Barrow, cross Eblin's chilled hamlet, dry roots and restings on their then superficies curiously correspondent with those linea and puncta where our tubbany habany metro maniplums below, the overflake under rails and stations at this time of writing, to the thrummings of a cruth fiddle which, cremoning and crononing, leavy greavy, witty and wavy, appy, leppy, and playable, caress the ears of the subjects of King Saint Finery the Festive, who, in brick homes of their own, and in their flavory phraseberry beds, heeding hardly cry of honeymen, sowed lavender or foin boin salmon alive, with their priggish mouths all open for the larger appreciation of this long-awaited Messiah of oratorios, were only half past that sweep, and after a brisk pause at a pawnbroking establishment for the prophetic purpose of redeeming the songster's truly admirable false teeth, and a prolonged visit to a house of call at Coohas Place, viz., the old Sot's Hole, in the parish of St. Cecily, within the liberty of Sowmore, not 1,001 national leagues that was, by Griffith's valuation, from the site of the statue of Primeur Glasstone, setting a match to the march of a maker. Last of the stewards peut-être, where the tale rambles along. The trio of Wackfowl the Diddlers was joined by a further intentions apply. Tomorrow casual and a decent sort of the had-been variety, who had just been touching that weekly insult, fuet, and all fig-bladders, who saith of noun, when stimulants in the shape of G and G's stood by the damned decent stort, after which sagged luncheon and a few ones more, just to celebrate yesterday, flushed with their fire-stuff-ortered friendship, the rascals came out of the licensed premises. Brown's first, the small PSXX executive cap a hand in their sad reel like a lady's postscript. I want money, please send, wiping their laugh-leaking lipes on their sleeves. How the Boccolines shout their Roskin generally. Sin fion, sain fion zaron, and the rhymer's world was with reason the richer for a would-be ballad, to the ballader of which the world of humanity singing owes a tribute for having placed on the planet's mellow map his lay of the vilest, bogier, but most attractionable avatar the world has ever had to explain for. This, more correctly, Lubine or fellow, me, leader was first poured forth, where Rio Livio riots and Col de Hodo humps, under the shadow of the monument of the should-have-been legislator, Eleutherodendron, spare, woodmen, spare, to an overflow meeting of all the nations in Leinster, fully filling the visional area, and, as a single-minded supercrowd, easily representative, what with masks, wet with faces, of all sections and cross-sections, wine shop and cocoa house poured out to brim up the broaching, of our Liffey-side people, to omit to mention of the mainland minority, and such as had wayfared via Watling, Ernin, Icknield, and Stane. In chief, a haughted Cockney car with its quotal of hard-mouthed hacks, a northern Tory, a southern Whig, an East Anglian chronicler, and a Landwester Guardian, ranging from slips of young Dublinos from Cutpurse Row, having nothing better to do than walk about with their hands in their knee pants, sucking airwhackers, weed illicit, jumbo bricks, side by side with truant officers, 3 woolen balls and poplin in search of a croast of pawn to busy professional gentlemen, a brace of palesmen with Dundrearies, nooning toward dailies, fresh from snipe hitting and mallard missing on Rutland Heath, exchanging cold sneers, mass-going ladies from Hume Street in their chairs, and bearers baited, some wandering hamalags out of the adjacent clover fields of Moss's Gardens, an oblate father from Skinner's Alley, bricklayers, a Fleming, in Tabernet Fumont, with his spouse and dog, an aged hammersmith, who had some chisellers by the hand, a bout of cudgel players, not a few sheep, with the Braxy, 2 blue-coat scholars, 4 broke gents out of Simpson's on the Rocks, a portly and pert still tassing turkey coffee, an orange shrub in Tickey's door, Peter Pym and Paul Fry, and then Elliot and Atkinson, suffering hell's delights from the blains on their annuitants' acorns, not forgetting a deuce of Diana's riding for the hunt, a particularist prebendary pondering on the Roman Easter, the tonsure question in Greek uniates, plunkum, a lace-lapped head, or 2 or 3 or 4 from a window, and so on down to a few good old souls, who, as they were juiced after taking their pledge over at the uncle's place, were evidently under the spell of liquor, for the wake of Tarry the tailor, a fair girl, a jolly poster boy thinking of 3 flagons in one, a plum-wood-roll, a half-serve from the weaver's almshouse, who clings and clings to her, a whole dam's cloud-hued petticoat, as child, as curiolator, as couch O'Leary. The warrow went round, so it did. A nation wants a gaze, and the ballad, and the Fellebrine trancopt meter affectioned by Taesibo in his casudas de Pulicinello artahut, stamp-stampeded onto a slip of blancovide, and headed by an excessively rough and red woodcut, privately printed at the rhyme press of Delville, soon fluttered its secret on white highways and brown byways to the rose of the winds and the blue of the gales, from archway to lattice and from black hand to pink ear, village crying to village, through the 5 pussy-fours green of the United States of Scotia Picta, and he who donays it, may his hairs be rubbed in dirt, to the added strains so peaceful of his majesty the flute, that one crude king of instruments, Pigot's purist, Cielo Ausiliuto, which Mr. Delacy, Horn, anticipating a perfect downpour of plaudits among the rhapsods, piped out of his decent sort hat, looking still more like a Percyful namesake, as men of Gaul noted, but before of to spot about. The snowy crested curl amoist the leader's wild and molting hair, Dr. Hitchcock hoisted his fezzy fuzz at bludgeon's height signum to his companions of the chalice for the loud fellow. Boys, in silentium in curia, our maypole once more where he rose of old, and the canto was chanted, there chorused and christened, where by the old toll gate Saint Anona's street and church. And around the lawn it ran, and this is the ran that Hosty made, spoken. Boyles and Cahills, Skerritts and Pritchards, versified and piercified, may the treat we take of life and stony. Here line the refrains of, some vote him Vike, some mote him Mike, some dub him Lin and Finn, while others hail him Log, Bog, Dan, Lap, Lex, Lax, Gun, or Gwyn. Some apt him Arth, some bapt him Barth, Call, no, soul, will, wheel, wall, but I parse him Perse O'Reilly, else he's called no name at all. Together, arrah, leave it to Hosty, frosty Hosty, leave it to Hosty, for he's the man to rhyme the ran, the king of all rans. Have you here? Some ha. Have we where? Some ha'n't. Have you heard? Others do. Have we weared? Others don't. It's combing, it's brumming, the clip, the clop, oh, glass, crash, the kick a clack, platcha, crappy, grada thang, seminum, nobody bloody lap. Music cue. The Ballad of Perse O'Reilly. Have you heard of our Humpty Dumpty, how he fell with a roll in a rumble, and curled up like Lord Olaf Crumple by the butt of the magazine wall, hump helmet at all. Have you heard of one Humpty Dumpty? As I say. He was one time our king of the castle. Now he's kicked about like a rotten old parsnip, and from the Green Street he'll be sent by order of his warship to the peel of the jail of the Montjoy. To the jail of the Montjoy. Jail him and joy. He was father of the schemes for to bother us, slow coaches and immaculate contraceptives for the populace, mare's milk for the sick, 7 dry Sundays a week, open air love and religious reform, hideous in form. At Hawaii says you couldn't he manage it. I'll go bail my fine dare me darling, like the bumping bull of the Cassidys. All your butter is in your horns, his butter is in his horns, butter in his horns. Hurrah there, Hosty, frosty Hosty, change that shirt on ye, rhyme the ran, the king of all rans. Balbaccio, we had chew, chaw, chops, chairs, chewing gums, and chicken pox and china chamblers, universally provided by his soft-soaping salesman. Small wonder he'll cheat Erawan, and our local lads nixed him when Shimpton first took the floor. Hey, when his bookshop soar down at the bargain wag lore. So snug he was in his hotel premises sumptuous, but soon we'll bonfire all his trash tricks and trumpery, and 'tis short till Sheriff Clancy'll be winding up in his unlimited company, with the ballast boom at the door, bim bam at the door, then he'll bum no more. Sweet bad luck on the waves wash to, O'Reilly, the hooker of the Hammerfast, Viking, and God's curse on the day when Eblana Bay saw his black and tan man o' war, on the harbour bar. Where from, roars Pulbeg, cooking half-plates. He bawls, don his maw, scam tire a wickin' wiping fampany. Finger, McCasker, one sign Barjars, Boniface, Thoxman, Gramenhold, Nordviker's Moniker, Augazai, or his Gamelhorn, Nordviker's Cod. A Norwegian camel, old cod. He is, by God. Lift it, Hosty, lift it, ye devil ye, up with the rhyming ran. It was during some fresh water garden pumping, or according to the nursing mirror, while admiring the monkeys that our heavyweight heathen Humphrey made bold a maid to woo. Woo-hoo, what'll she do? The general lost her maid in lieu. For he ought to blush for himself, the old hay-headed philosopher, for to go and shove himself that way on top of her. But gob, he's the crux of the catalogue of our antediluvial zoo, Messieurs Billing and Coo, Noah's larks, good as new. He was jolting by Wellington's monument, Arotorius hippopotamus, when some bugger let down the back trap of the omnibus, and he caught his death of the Fusiliers with a rent in his rears. Give him 6 years. 'Tis sore pity for his innocent poor children, but look out for his Mrs. Legitimate. When that Frew gets a grip of old Earwicker, won't there be earwigs on the green? Big earwigs on the green, the largest you've ever seen. Sophocles, Shakespeare, Sudadanto, Anonymous. Then we'll have a free trade gales band in mass meeting, for to sod the brave son of scandal knavery, and we'll bury him down in Oxman's town, along with the Devlin Danes, with the deaf and dumb Danes, and all their remains. And not all the king's men nor his horses will resurrect his corpus, for there's no true spell in Connaught or hell that's able to raise a king.